When you first fall in love with a narcissist, it often feels like discovering a world of intensity, charm, and connection that you've never experienced before. They are magnetic, compelling, and their attention makes you feel seen in ways you didn't even realize you were craving. And in those early days, you might feel completely alive, as if this love is a validation of everything about you. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, that vibrant sense of self that you brought into the relationship begins to shift. You start to notice subtle compromises creeping into your thoughts, your decisions, your very identity. At first, it's small things. You might choose what to wear based on their preferences, or quietly accommodate their moods rather than expressing your own. You might laugh at jokes you don't find funny or suppress opinions that might spark even the tiniest disagreement. It seems harmless at the time. After all, in any relationship, some level of compromise is natural, even healthy. But with a narcissist, these small adjustments are the beginning of a profound internal erosion. Their needs, insecurities, and whims gradually take priority, and your own desires start receding into the background. Over time, you notice you're asking yourself fewer questions about what you want and more about how to keep the other person happy. You start to gauge your own actions by the lens of their reactions. Did I say the right thing? Did I behave in a way that won't trigger criticism? Am I enough? These questions begin to dominate your inner world, and slowly, your identity begins to fragment. You might not even realize it because the narcissist's charm and reinforcement, when it comes, keeps you tethered. The intermittent praise, the rare moments of connection, the flashes of intimacy, they become addictive. You cling to them, and in doing so, you continue to sacrifice pieces of your authentic self. One of the most insidious aspects of this process is how normalized it becomes. You start thinking that this is just how relationships work, that giving in, bending, and prioritizing someone else's feelings over your own is love, and yet deep down, a quiet voice inside you senses the cost. You feel a vague discomfort, a subtle unease that perhaps you are losing touch with yourself. That voice may whisper during quiet moments, "Who am I, really, outside of this relationship?" But you push it aside, often dismissing it as irrational, or worse, selfish. The narcissist is a master at ensuring you doubt your own instincts, reinforcing the idea that your feelings are secondary, your reality is negotiable, and your identity is flexible to their liking. This erosion doesn't happen overnight, but the consequences accumulate over months and years. You might start avoiding friends or family whose perspectives challenge the narrative the narcissist has built. You might stop pursuing hobbies or passions because they aren't validated or appreciated by your partner. Little by little, your world shrinks, not because you want it to, but because the relationship has subtly redirected your energy and attention away from yourself. By the time you recognize the full extent of what has happened, it can feel like looking at a stranger in the mirror. And yet, paradoxically, this loss of self is also where transformation can begin. Once the relationship ends, once the manipulations and gaslighting no longer dominate your emotional landscape, you are faced with a choice to retreat into self-blame, resentment, and despair, or to embark on the difficult but profoundly liberating journey of rediscovery. The process of reclaiming your identity is neither linear nor easy. It demands honesty, patience, and courage. It requires you to acknowledge the parts of yourself that you had minimized, ignored, or abandoned. It asks you to confront the pain of having given so much of your inner world to someone who could never reciprocate fully, and yet, through that confrontation, to begin piecing yourself back together. An important step in this healing is remembering that losing yourself in a narcissistic relationship is not a failure. It is a reflection of deep human vulnerability. The innate desire to connect, to be loved, to belong. It is a testament to your capacity for empathy and openness, qualities that are admirable, not flawed. Recognizing this allows you to shift the narrative from shame to understanding. You begin to see that the very traits that made you susceptible to this kind of relationship, your sensitivity, your kindness, your willingness to invest fully in another human being are also the traits that can guide you toward healthier, more fulfilling connections in the future. As you slowly reclaim your sense of self, you notice the subtle shifts first in your inner dialogue. You speak to yourself with more compassion. You question less. The value of your own perspective. You start to say no without guilt, to prioritize your own needs without fear. The mirror reflection you once feared now becomes familiar, then comforting, and eventually empowering. You learn that identity is not a static thing. It is something you can rebuild, redefine, and protect. And through this painstaking but necessary process, you emerge not only stronger, but wiser. You understand, with clarity and conviction, who you are, what you want, and what you will no longer tolerate. Loving a narcissist, then, is a paradoxical teacher. It strips away parts of you took for granted, exposing vulnerabilities you may have hidden even from yourself. But in that exposure lies the opportunity for profound growth. The process is painful, sometimes excruciating, yet it is also transformative. By surviving the experience, by observing the ways in which you were diminished, and then actively choosing to reclaim your selfhood, you achieve a form of liberation that few other experiences can provide. At the end of the day, the relationship changes you forever. Not because it defines you, but because it forces you to confront the depths of who you are and what you deserve. The key is to remember that every piece of your lost self is waiting to be found, nurtured, and honored. This journey is not about vengeance, nor about erasing the past. It is about reclaiming the authority of your own life, and recognizing that your true self has always been, and will always remain, worthy of love. And in that reclamation, there is power, there is clarity, there is freedom. You are not lost, you are awakening. After loving a narcissist, one of the most lasting changes you notice is how hyper-aware you become. Emotionally, physically, even mentally. It begins subtly, almost imperceptibly, during the relationship itself. You start scanning their tone, the way your eyes move, the timing of their messages, the slightest shifts in their demeanor. At first, you might think this is normal attentiveness, but over time, it becomes a pattern, a constant calibration of your environment to avoid conflict, to anticipate moods, to predict reactions. You are learning, sometimes unconsciously, how to survive their emotional volatility. This hyper-awareness is not merely a habit. It is a deeply physiological response. Your nervous system becomes finely tuned to detect threat. In the presence of a narcissist, even something as innocuous as a quiet room can feel tense. You begin to read between the lines of their words, listening not just to what is said, but to what is unsaid. Pauses, glances, micro-expressions, all of these become information, and your brain starts analyzing them continuously. Every interaction becomes a puzzle, every response a test, and every silence a warning signal. The intensity of this vigilance is exhausting, yet strangely addictive because it is also the mechanism through which you maintain any semblance of connection, safety, or approval. After the relationship ends, this hyper-awareness does not vanish immediately. Your nervous system, having been trained to remain alert for threats, carries these lessons into new spaces, new interactions, and even your own internal dialogue. You may find yourself overanalyzing situations that have no real danger, replaying conversations for hidden meanings, or second-guessing others' intentions. A casual comment from a friend might trigger a cascade of doubt. Did I offend them? Are they upset with me? Did I miss a cue? This heightened sensitivity is not a flaw. It is a residue of trauma, a survival mechanism that served a purpose during the relationship, but now needs careful management. The emotional impact is profound. You start noticing patterns in your own reactions. How quiet. See Kaioki, you become anxious when someone is late, or how intensely you feel when someone disagrees with you. Even in relationships that are safe and nurturing, your body remembers the unpredictability, the sudden shifts in mood, the manipulation. You feel tension in your chest, a knot in your stomach, or a racing heartbeat before your mind even recognizes the trigger. These are not signs of weakness. They are signs of learning, of adaptation. Your body has encoded the lessons of the past in ways that words cannot undo. One of the hardest parts of this hyper-awareness is recognizing its double-edged nature. On one hand, it makes you deeply perceptive. You can read situations and people with clarity that others might lack. You become highly empathetic and intuitive, capable of sensing undercurrents that many cannot. On the other hand, it can lead to overthinking, mistrust, and difficulty relaxing. You are aware of danger everywhere because, at some point, danger became your constant companion. Learning to modulate this awareness, to distinguish between genuine threats and residual echoes of past trauma, is a crucial part of healing. This hyper-awareness also teaches an invaluable lesson about boundaries and self-protection. During the relationship, you became acutely aware of the fine line between maintaining connection and losing yourself. You learned to anticipate manipulations, to detect subtle coercion, and to navigate emotional minefields. While this can feel like a heavy burden, it is also a skill that strengthens your emotional intelligence. You begin to understand that your feelings are data, your intuition is valid, and your perceptions are a guide to self-preservation. This heightened sensitivity, when harnessed consciously, can become a powerful tool for recognizing healthy versus toxic interactions moving forward. Yet perhaps the most subtle shift is internal. Well, you become attuned not just to external cues but to your own inner state. You notice patterns in your emotional responses, recognize triggers, and begin to track the subtle interplay between thought and feeling. Loving a narcissist forces a level of introspection that is intense and unavoidable. You confront your vulnerabilities, your unmet needs, and the ways in which you unconsciously gave power away. This internal awareness is difficult but necessary. It forms the foundation for reclaiming your identity, because before you can rebuild your boundaries and assert your needs, you must understand the mechanics of how they were eroded. It is important to acknowledge, however, that this heightened awareness can feel isolating. Friends or family may not understand why you analyze every tone, every glance, every nuance. They may feel you are overreacting or being unnecessarily cautious. But this is not paranoia. It is a learned vigilance, a reflection of your lived experience. And with time, as you learn to trust yourself again, this vigilance evolves. You begin to differentiate between residual hypervigilance and healthy discernment. You learn to relax in safe environments while retaining the capacity to protect yourself when needed. The beauty of this transformation is that, despite the pain, it gives you a unique advantage. People who have loved a narcissist often emerge with an uncanny emotional acumen. You notice subtleties in conversation, shifts in energy, and potential risks before others do. You develop a finely tuned emotional radar that allows you to navigate relationships with precision and wisdom. The key is not to view this hyper-awareness as a limitation, but as a survival skill that can be refined into a strength. When combined with self-compassion and reflective practice, it becomes a tool for not only protecting yourself, but also deepening your understanding of human behavior. Ultimately, what this experience teaches is that awareness is not inherently dangerous. It is how we manage it that determines our growth. The hyper-awareness cultivated in the crucible of loving a narcissist can either trap you in fear or empower you with insight. By learning to observe without judgment, to discern without anxiety, and to act without fear, you convert a survival mechanism into a source of wisdom. It becomes a lens through which you can see the world more clearly, understand yourself more deeply, and engage in relationships with a level of intentionality that few acquire naturally. Loving a narcissist changes your nervous system, your perception, and your emotional reflexes. It teaches vigilance, teaches empathy, and teaches discernment. It can leave scars, yes, but it can also leave insight, resilience, and a profound understanding of the interplay between human behavior and emotional survival. The key is to honor the lessons without letting the wounds define you. Over time, hyper-awareness transforms from a shadow into a guiding light, helping you navigate life with clarity, caution, and ultimately courage. And in that clarity, in that careful observation, you find a new kind of freedom. You are no longer merely reacting to the world. You are participating consciously, choosing wisely, and protecting your inner life with the wisdom you earned the hard way. This is the gift of hyper-awareness. It reminds you that although the past shaped you, it does not control you, and that the ability to observe, learn, and act from this new awareness is the beginning of your true liberation. You notice more, but you fear less. You feel deeply, but you no longer lose yourself. You are awake. When you love a narcissist, one of the most disorienting experiences is the gradual erosion of your trust in your own reality. It doesn't happen all at once. At first, it's subtle. A small comment dismissed as you're overreacting. A disagreement, as if you misunderstood. A memory questioned and then doubted. You begin to notice a quiet, creeping confusion. You remember events one way, but their version is different, and somehow their version is always the one that counts. And in those moments you start asking yourself questions that you never used to ask. Am I imagining this? Was I too sensitive? Did I misread the situation? This self-doubt is not a reflection of weakness. It is a natural response to consistent invalidation and manipulation. The narcissist's power lies in their ability to destabilize your perception, to make the familiar feel uncertain, and to convince you that your mind is unreliable. They twist facts, omit truths, and selectively recount events to maintain control. Over time, this causes your mind to hesitate, to second-guess, to question even the most straightforward experiences. You begin to rely on them, or even on a vague fear of judgment, for validation of what is real. And yet, even as your reality feels increasingly uncertain, the love you feel is genuine. You are fully present, fully engaged, and fully giving of yourself. You care deeply, you invest emotionally, and you believe in the connection. The dissonance between your experience and the narcissist's narrative is subtle at first, but grows insidiously. You start walking a psychological tightrope, constantly weighing your perception against theirs, and trying to reconcile conflicting realities. The cognitive load is immense, and it begins to reshape how you process the world. Gaslighting, as this manipulation is often called, leaves deep traces in the mind. You begin questioning not only what happened in specific moments, but also your instincts and judgments more broadly. When the narcissist repeatedly invalidates your perception, your intuition, the very compass that has guided you throughout life, becomes unreliable. You might feel a persistent, gnawing uncertainty. Am I too sensitive? Am I overthinking everything? Why can't I trust my feelings? These questions are exhausting and they chip away at confidence, sometimes in ways that last long after the relationship has ended. But here's the paradox. This process, painful and destabilizing as it is, also holds the seeds of profound self-awareness. By confronting the ways in which your perception was manipulated, you begin to recognize patterns in human behavior and in your own responses. You learn to identify the subtle ways people can distort reality for their benefit. You start noticing the red flags you missed, the inconsistencies you once ignored, and the emotional traps that ensnared you. This awareness is hard-won, and it comes from surviving an experience that demanded acute psychological and emotional vigilance. Over time, rebuilding trust in your own reality becomes both a challenge and a profound exercise in reclaiming power. You learn to pay attention to your inner signals, the emotions that arise, the bodily sensations, the subtle warnings that your intuition sends. You learn to validate your own memories, your own judgments, and your own feelings without needing someone else to confirm them. This reclamation is not about arrogance or self-righteousness. It is about restoring authority over your own mind and your own life. You begin to see that the capacity to trust yourself is not something granted by others. It is something you rebuild piece by piece, through conscious reflection, mindfulness, and emotional honesty. The process also reshapes your relationship with truth and accountability. You understand that being manipulated does not make you weak. It makes you human. You realize that loving a narcissist is a profound test of discernment, and surviving it teaches resilience, patience, and emotional acuity. In the aftermath, you begin to measure relationships by their alignment with reality, their consistency, and their respect for mutual perception. You learn that healthy connection is rooted in honesty, empathy, and reciprocity, not in distortion, confusion, or control. There is also a subtle, but vital, shift in how you relate to yourself. You become more introspective, more deliberate, and more compassionate toward your own experiences. Where once you might have dismissed or minimized your own feelings, you now honor them. You recognize the value of your perception, the importance of self-validation, and the necessity of trusting your instincts. This internal shift is essential for healing. It allows you to rebuild confidence and resilience while maintaining the hard-earned lessons learned from loving someone who constantly undermined your reality. Yet, the journey is not linear. There are moments of relapse, times when old doubts resurface, when your mind questions your memory or interprets events through the lens of past manipulation. This is normal. Healing is rarely a straight path. The key is to observe these moments without judgment, to remind yourself that awareness is your ally, and to lean into practices that reinforce self-trust. Journaling, mindfulness, therapy, and honest conversations with trusted friends all serve as tools to restore clarity and certainty. Each act of acknowledging and validating your own experience is a brick in the foundation of your renewed sense of reality. Importantly, regaining trust in your own reality is not about perfection. It is about presence and alignment. It is about knowing that your mind can hold space for the truth as you perceive it, and that your perceptions matter. This understanding forms the basis for healthier relationships in the future, because it strengthens your ability to set boundaries, to recognize manipulation early, and to engage with others from a position of self-assurance rather than fear or doubt. Loving a narcissist may have left you questioning everything, but it also taught you that truth is worth defending, that your experience is valid, and that your mind has the capacity to distinguish reality from distortion. It is through this process that you reclaim ownership of your inner world, restore the authority of your own judgment, and awaken to the wisdom embedded in your lived experience. The scars from these experiences may remain, but they are not permanent marks of failure. They are evidence of survival, insight, and endurance. They remind you that the human mind is resilient and adaptable, that clarity can be restored, and that self-trust, once rebuilt, is unshakable. In learning to trust yourself again, you reclaim not only your perception of reality, but your sense of autonomy, your capacity for love, and your power to live authentically. By the end of this journey, what once felt like disorientation transforms into clarity. You notice the difference between manipulation and honesty, between fear and intuition, between doubt and discernment. You move through the world with a sharper lens, a more grounded sense of self, and an unshakable recognition that reality is yours to define. And in that reclamation, you are no longer a passive observer of your life. You are fully awake, fully present, and fully empowered. You may have questioned everything, but in the end, you find that the most important truth of all is the one that lives inside you, that your mind, your perception, and your reality are yours to honor, protect, and trust. One of the most profound and lasting effects of loving a narcissist is the way it reshapes your understanding of love itself. In the beginning, love may have felt pure, exciting, even magical. You experienced moments of intense connection that made your heart race and your mind feel alive. You believed that this depth of feeling was a reflection of a true reciprocal bond, but over time what you come to recognize is that the intensity you felt was often fueled by imbalance, manipulation, and conditional affection. You begin to see that chaos can masquerade as passion, and emotional highs and lows can feel like intimacy. even when they are rooted in control. When you reflect on it, you realize that loving a narcissist blurs the lines between love and need, connection and dependency, passion and obsession, the intermittent reinforcement, the praise, the attention, the rare moments of warmth. Creates a kind of emotional addiction. Your brain comes to associate unpredictability with excitement, instability with connection. You may find yourself defending behaviors that, in any other context, would be unacceptable. You may find yourself rationalizing cruelty, minimizing pain, or excusing manipulation, simply because it comes wrapped in moments of affection. This distortion changes the lens through which you view relationships, not just with the narcissist, but with everyone afterward. You begin to notice that what you thought was love often involved compromise at the cost of your own well-being. You learn that giving endlessly without reciprocity can feel like intimacy, and that sacrificing your needs can feel like devotion. This realization is painful because it challenges your most cherished beliefs about what love is supposed to be. You feel anger, confusion, even grief, not only for the relationship itself, but for the ways in which your understanding of love was hijacked. You mourn the innocence of your expectations, the trust you placed in your heart, and the clarity you once had about what it means to care for another human being. And yet, within this distortion, there is a lesson. Loving a narcissist teaches you that love is not merely an emotional experience. It is also a reflection of safety, respect, and mutual recognition. Real love does not leave you doubting yourself, questioning your reality, or feeling like a hostage to someone else's moods. Real love does not make you shrink, second guess, or constantly accommodate another's whims at the expense of your own identity. It is steady, reciprocal, and sustaining. The intensity you once mistook for passion is revealed as a symptom of imbalance, and this revelation becomes a catalyst for redefining love in your life. You also learn that emotional turbulence is not equivalent to intimacy. Feeling extreme highs and lows with someone may feel compelling, but it is not the same as genuine connection. A relationship rooted in empathy, transparency, and care does not require constant emotional gymnastics to feel alive. Loving a narcissist teaches you to discern between emotional stimulation and true emotional nourishment, between excitement and safety, between attraction and respect. This discernment is not automatic. It is cultivated through reflection, observation, and often, the painful process of recovery. Another subtle effect is the redefinition of your expectations. After the relationship, you begin to notice the patterns you once overlooked. You realize that attention should feel consistent, not sporadic. That understanding should feel reciprocal, not manipulative. That affection should feel genuine, not conditional. You start to recognize red flags earlier, to trust your intuition, and to prioritize relationships that offer stability, respect, and authenticity. The distortion you experienced, as painful as it was, becomes a teacher, guiding you toward healthier connections and a more grounded understanding of love. This transformation also affects how you relate to yourself. Loving a narcissist often teaches you that self-love is not optional. It is essential. You begin to understand that your value does not depend on someone else's recognition, that your emotional needs are legitimate, and that caring for yourself is not selfish but necessary. This self-awareness changes how you engage in relationships. You start to set boundaries, to honor your feelings, and to cultivate connections that reflect mutual respect rather than imbalance. The distortion you endured becomes a contrast, clarifying what real love feels like and why it matters. It is important to acknowledge, however, that healing this distortion takes time. You may carry lingering doubts or confusing patterns into future relationships. You may be drawn to intensity because it is familiar or because your nervous system associates it with connection. You may struggle to trust that calm, consistent love can feel just as meaningful, if not more so, than the highs and lows of chaos. Recognizing these patterns without judgment is crucial. By observing your responses, reflecting on your experiences, and learning from the past, you slowly recalibrate your understanding of intimacy and care. Over time, you discover that loving a narcissist has not only changed your perception of love, but also strengthened your capacity to recognize it when it is authentic. You begin to appreciate the subtle gestures of empathy, the quiet consistency of presence, and the power of mutual respect. You learn to value relationships that nourish your spirit rather than deplete it. You understand that love is not measured by intensity alone, but by the depth of connection, the alignment of values, and the integrity of emotional engagement. This redefinition of love also allows you to cultivate a sense of agency in your relationships. You will no longer allow others to dictate your worth or shape your emotions through manipulation. You reclaim the ability to choose connections that are sustaining rather than destabilizing, nurturing rather than toxic. The lessons learned from loving a narcissist equip you with insight, discernment, and emotional literacy that guide your choices moving forward. Ultimately, the distortion of love caused by a narcissist is not wasted. Though it can leave deep scars, it also illuminates the difference between what is harmful and what is life-affirming. It forces you to confront the limits of tolerance, the necessity of self-respect, and the importance of boundaries. Through this confrontation, you learn that love is not about surrendering yourself to another's whims. It is about mutual recognition, shared growth, and the freedom to be fully yourself. Loving a narcissist changes your understanding of love forever, but it can also teach you its truest form. It challenges you, reshapes you, and ultimately equips you to seek and recognize relationships that are authentic, steady, and reciprocal. The intensity of the past becomes a lens through which you see the world more clearly, discern connection more deeply, and honor the value of love that nurtures rather than diminishes. You once confused chaos with passion, but now you recognize that true intimacy feels safe, sustaining, and liberating. You once sought validation from another, but now you understand that the heart's deepest needs are honored first within yourself. The distortion you experienced was painful, but it was also the teacher that prepared you to embrace love that is real, grounded, and transformative. And in that clarity, you are free. You are no longer defined by confusion or manipulation. You are awake to the reality of love as it was meant to be experienced. Reciprocal, steady, and life-affirming. One of the most profound transformations that occurs after loving a narcissist is the way your understanding and practice of boundaries changes. During the relationship, boundaries were often ignored, dismissed, or actively punished. You may have felt like your personal space, your needs, and your limits were constantly under scrutiny or negotiation. Saying no might have triggered anger, withdrawal, or emotional manipulation. You may have compromised more than you realized, sacrificing comfort, peace, and even your own principles to avoid conflict or maintain a semblance of connection. Over time, this erosion of boundaries leaves a deep imprint, and after the relationship, the process of reclaiming them becomes both essential and transformative. At first, the challenge is recognizing that your boundaries were violated in the first place. When you are immersed in manipulation, it can feel normal to constantly accommodate someone else's moods, to minimize your needs, and to place another person's comfort above your own. You may have internalized the idea that being flexible, adaptable, or self-sacrificing is synonymous with love. But the truth becomes clear over time. Boundaries are not about rigidity. They are about self-respect, safety, and mutual recognition. Reclaiming them is about understanding that your feelings, needs, and limits are valid and worthy of protection. The process of rediscovering your boundaries is not linear. Initially, you may swing between extremes. You might overcompensate by building walls too high, keeping everyone at a distance for fear of being hurt again. Or you might struggle to enforce them at all, worrying that asserting your needs will lead to conflict, rejection, or judgment. Both responses are understandable and natural. They are part of the process of recalibrating after a relationship that constantly tested, manipulated, and disregarded your personal limits. Learning to establish healthy boundaries involves tuning into yourself in ways you may not have done before. You begin to notice when something feels uncomfortable, draining, or disrespectful. You learn to differentiate between genuine compromise, and self-abandonment. You start to see that saying no is not a betrayal of love, but an affirmation of your right to exist fully and authentically. This is a radical shift for someone whose boundaries were once ignored or ridiculed. It requires courage, introspection, and practice. Each time you honor a boundary, no matter how small, you are reclaiming a piece of yourself that was lost. The process also involves unlearning patterns of guilt and self-blame. A narcissist often conditions you to feel responsible for their emotions, to absorb their anger, and to question your own legitimacy. As a result, saying no or prioritizing your needs may initially trigger deep guilt. You might feel as if you are being selfish, uncaring, or ungrateful. But part of the transformation is recognizing that honoring your boundaries is not selfish. It is necessary. Your capacity to give love, compassion, and attention is only sustainable when it is balanced with care for your own well-being. Over time, setting boundaries becomes empowering. You begin to notice how your emotional resilience strengthens as a result. You learn to identify situations, relationships, or interactions that are draining or toxic, and respond with clarity rather than instinctive compliance. You discover that boundaries are not barriers to connection, but pathways to authentic, respectful relationships. People who honor your limits and treat you with integrity become part of your life naturally, while those who disregard or manipulate your boundaries no longer hold the same power over your emotional landscape. Interestingly, this transformation often reveals patterns in your own behavior that you were previously unaware of. Loving a narcissist forces self-reflection. You notice where you allowed others to overstep, where fear of conflict influenced your decisions, and where your desire for approval overrode your judgment. Recognizing these patterns is not about blame. It is about insight. It gives you the opportunity to consciously choose how you interact with others, moving forward, to rebuild your relationships on a foundation of mutual respect and integrity, and to cultivate a life that aligns with your values. The reclamation of boundaries also intersects with self-compassion. As you learn to honor your limits, you become gentler with yourself for the times you failed to do so in the past. You recognize that you were responding to a difficult and manipulative environment, that you were doing your best with the tools you had, and that each step toward assertiveness is a triumph. This compassion allows healing to unfold naturally, without the weight of shame or self-judgment, and it reinforces the understanding that your needs and feelings are legitimate, important, and deserving of protection. Another aspect of this transformation is the recognition that boundaries are dynamic, not fixed. You learn to assess each relationship and situation, individually applying discernment rather than rigidity. You discover that healthy boundaries are flexible yet firm. They adapt to context, but never compromise your core well-being. This skill becomes a form of emotional literacy, allowing you to navigate relationships with clarity, integrity, and confidence. You are no longer at the mercy of manipulation or expectation. You are an active participant in shaping the interactions and connections in your life. Ultimately, reclaiming your boundaries after loving a narcissist is a form of empowerment. It restores your sense of agency, your ability to say yes or no without fear, and your capacity to engage in relationships as an equal, not a subordinate. It teaches that self-respect is not negotiable, and that true connection requires mutual acknowledgement of each person's limits and needs. Through this process, you transform from someone whose boundaries were constantly tested into someone who knows their worth, honors their space, and demands respect in all aspects of life. This journey is not just about protecting yourself from others. It is also about cultivating a profound respect for your own inner world. You learn to listen to your instincts, to value your emotions, and to act in ways that align with your authentic self. You begin to see that boundaries are not obstacles to intimacy. They are essential to it. They allow love to exist without coercion, respect to flourish without coercion, respect to flourish without compromise, and connection to deepen without loss of self. By the time this transformation is complete, the experience of loving a narcissist is no longer simply a story of loss or violation. It becomes a narrative of growth, self-discovery, and empowerment. The lessons learned about boundaries extend beyond romantic relationships. They inform friendships, family dynamics, professional interactions, and your relationship with yourself. Each boundary you honor is a declaration that you are worthy, that your feelings matter, and that you will no longer compromise your integrity for the sake of another's comfort. And in that reclamation, you find freedom. Freedom from manipulation, from over-accommodation, from the constant anxiety of being invalidated or ignored. You realize that boundaries are not limitations. They are expressions of strength, wisdom, and self-respect. The journey may have begun in pain, confusion, and compromise, but it ends in empowerment, clarity, and an unwavering recognition of your worth. Setting boundaries is no longer a fearful act. It is an act of liberation. It is the foundation for every healthy, authentic connection you will experience from this point forward. You have learned that protecting your limits is not optional, and that the strength to say no properly, but is the strength to live fully and authentically. Your boundaries are your armor and your sanctuary. Honor them, and you honor yourself. One of the most remarkable transformations that comes from loving a narcissist is the discovery of an emotional strength you never knew existed. In the midst of the relationship, you often feel drained, depleted, and overwhelmed. You give endlessly, care intensely, and try tirelessly to meet needs that are constantly shifting. You are exposed to manipulation, gaslighting, and emotional volatility that challenge not only your sense of self, but also your very resilience. It can feel unbearable, at times, as if every ounce of your emotional energy is being tested beyond its limits. And yet, it is precisely this crucible of experience that begins to forge a strength you may not recognize while you are in it, but one that reveals itself more clearly over time. Initially, this strength is quiet. It is present in the way you navigate difficult conversations, anticipate emotional turbulence, or manage the constant uncertainty. You become resourceful, finding ways to survive emotionally even when the odds seem stacked against you. Each day, each interaction, demands focus, patience, and endurance. You learn to regulate your own emotions while being exposed to someone else's unpredictable ones. You develop a vigilance that keeps you aware of your own limits and the ways in which you can protect yourself, even subtly, without causing confrontation. This is the beginning of emotional fortitude, the kind of resilience that does not come from comfort or ease, but from surviving complexity and hardship. Over time, you notice that even in moments of profound pain, you are capable of extraordinary endurance. You confront betrayal, criticism, and dismissal, yet you continue to engage, to care, and to respond with empathy where it is possible. You may ought to feel strong in the moment, but when you look back, you realize that you navigated experiences that would have left many people broken or defeated. The very fact that you remained present, even partially, is evidence of a depth of strength that cannot be easily measured, but is undeniable in its effect on your growth and capacity to endure. Another aspect of this strength is emotional intelligence. Loving a narcissist requires you to observe behavior, understand motives, and anticipate reactions in ways that are complex and subtle. You become adept at reading between the lines, interpreting emotions, and managing your own responses strategically. This is not manipulation. It is survival, awareness, and wisdom in action. The emotional literacy you develop in response to the challenges of the relationship becomes an enduring asset, equipping you with skills that enhance your interactions, decision-making, and self-understanding in all areas of life. What is particularly remarkable is that this strength often emerges alongside vulnerability. Loving a narcissist exposes you to pain, rejection, and grief, and yet, within that vulnerability, resilience grows. You learn that strength is not the absence of sensitivity. Rather, it is the capacity to feel deeply, process honestly, and continue moving forward even when the experience is painful. The heart that has been broken, manipulated, and tested can still heal, And in doing so, it discovers reserves of courage and endurance that are otherwise dormant. Vulnerability and strength are not opposites. They are intertwined, and the experience of loving a narcissist forces you to discover the truth in a profound and visceral way. This process also cultivates patience and self-compassion. You learn to forgive yourself for mistakes, for tolerating behaviors you now recognize as harmful, and for trusting someone who could not reciprocate fully. You understand that survival, not perfection, is the measure of your growth. Each small step of emotional recovery becomes a testament to your resilience. Every moment in which you set a boundary, reclaim a piece of yourself, or honor your needs is evidence of an emerging power that comes from experience, reflection, and conscious choice. Importantly, the strength gained through this experience is not just personal. It shapes how you engage with the world. You develop a deeper understanding of human behavior, of motivations, and of the ways in which people protect themselves, manipulate others, or seek validation. This insight allows you to navigate relationships with discernment, empathy, and clarity. You become a person who can recognize red flags, respond effectively to challenges, and maintain composure in emotionally charged situations. The lessons of survival and endurance translate into wisdom that informs your interactions in both personal and professional contexts, and ultimately shapes the quality of your connections moving forward. At its core, this emotional strength is about reclaiming agency. Loving a narcissist often leaves you feeling powerless, caught in a web of manipulation, and uncertain about your own capacity to act. But the process of healing, of reflecting on the experience, and of integrating the lessons learned restores a profound sense of control. You begin to see that while you could not control the narcissist's behavior, you can control your response, your choices, and your path forward. This recognition is transformative, as it shifts the locus of power back to yourself. And in doing so, it creates a foundation for future resilience, autonomy, and authentic connection. Another dimension of this growth is the development of emotional boundaries that are both firm and flexible. Strength does not mean rigidity, it means discernment, the ability to protect yourself while remaining open to connection. Through the challenges of loving a narcissist, you learn how to recognize what is safe and nourishing, and what is harmful or depleting. You practice saying no without guilt, honoring your needs without fear, and engaging with others from a place of integrity, rather than obligation. This skill, born of hardship, becomes a lifelong asset, shaping your interactions and preserving your well-being in profound ways. Perhaps the most important aspect of this emotional strength is its transformative potential. The pain, confusion, and vulnerability you experienced can evolve into resilience, insight, and empowerment. You learn that your capacity to endure, to recover, and to grow is far greater than you may have imagined. The experience teaches you that hardship does not define weakness. It defines opportunity, the opportunity to cultivate wisdom, self-respect, and a profound understanding of the human heart. Ultimately, the emotional strength that emerges from loving a narcissist is a gift disguised as suffering. It teaches endurance, insight, and self-compassion. It reminds you of your capacity to survive even in environments of manipulation and unpredictability. It deepens your understanding of human behavior, clarifies your values, and strengthens your ability to create authentic, nurturing connections. This strength is not superficial. It is deeply rooted, lasting, and transformative. And in recognizing this strength, you begin to see the broader truth that pain, when faced with awareness and courage, is never wasted. It becomes the crucible in which resilience, insight, and empowerment are forged. Loving a narcissist may have tested you in ways that felt unbearable, but it has also revealed depths within you that are indestructible. You have endured, you have grown, and you have discovered a well of strength that will carry you through every challenge yet to come. You survived the storm, and in surviving, you are unbreakable. By the time you reach the final stages of reflecting on what it means to have loved a narcissist, you begin to notice a truth that is both sobering and liberating. You are never the same after the experience, and not always in a bad way. At first, this realization can feel unsettling. You may mourn the person you were before, the trust you once had, the simplicity with which you approached relationships. You might grieve for the innocence and naivety that allowed you to love openly, to believe fully, and to hope without reservation. The change can feel like a loss, a shadow that lingers over your sense of self. But as you settle into reflection, you realize that this transformation is not purely destructive. It is also revealing, clarifying, and awakening. The process of loving a narcissist alters the way you perceive the world and yourself. You are no longer naive about human behavior. You have witnessed manipulation, control, and emotional volatility firsthand. You have seen how charm can mask cruelty, how attention can hide indifference, and how affection can coexist with harm. This knowledge, though painful, gives you insight. You start to notice subtleties in behavior, to recognize patterns that once went unseen, and to respond with awareness rather than instinct alone. In a way, the experience sharpens your perception, making you more attuned to both danger and authenticity. You also notice a change in your emotional landscape. The intensity of loving a narcissist reshapes the way you experience emotions. You feel more deeply, more consciously, and sometimes more cautiously. You recognize the difference between emotional highs and genuine connection, between attachment born of need and love born of respect. Your heart has been stretched, tested, and exposed. And in that exposure, it has gained a depth that was previously untapped. The capacity for love, empathy, and understanding that remains after such an experience is profound precisely because it has been tempered by challenge. Another transformation lies in discernment. You have learned, often through harsh lessons, to see what is real and what is illusion. You are able to differentiate between behaviors that are consistent and those that are manipulative, between care that is nurturing and attention that is transactional. This discernment extends not only to romantic relationships, but to friendships, professional connections, and even casual interactions. You approach others with a balanced perspective, aware, cautious when necessary, but also capable of trust and connection where it is deserved. In this way, loving a narcissist has not only changed you, it has equipped you with tools to navigate the world more wisely. Perhaps one of the most important ways you are different is in your understanding of self-worth. Loving a narcissist often erodes confidence and fosters self-doubt. You may have questioned your value, your intuition, and your instincts, but as you recover, you begin to reclaim that sense of worth. You realize that your value was never determined by someone else's recognition or approval. You begin to honor your feelings, trust your judgment, and assert your needs without apology. This reclaimed self-worth is a foundation for every future relationship decision and boundary you establish. It is the most enduring gift of a painful experience, the knowledge that you are enough, exactly as you are. You also learn resilience. Loving a narcissist can feel like a prolonged test of endurance, patience, and emotional fortitude. Every day in the relationship demanded adaptation, vigilance, and emotional regulation. Every act of self-preservation, no matter how small, built strength. And when the relationship ends, you realize that you have survived something extraordinarily challenging. You have faced emotional turbulence that could have broken many people, yet you emerged standing, reflective, and capable of continued growth. This resilience informs every aspect of your life, giving you confidence that you can endure, recover, and thrive despite hardship. Importantly, this transformation is not just about personal growth. It also changes how you engage with love itself. After loving a narcissist, you approach relationships with intention, clarity, and self-awareness. You recognize the patterns you once fell into, and you are less likely to repeat them. You prioritize mutual respect, emotional safety, and authenticity. You are less willing to compromise your integrity or abandon your needs for the sake of connection. The love you give and receive after such an experience is tempered by wisdom, discernment, and the recognition that your heart deserves reciprocity, consistency, and care. Yet it is also essential to acknowledge the lingering scars. Loving a narcissist leaves marks, emotional, psychological, and sometimes physical, that do not vanish overnight. You may find moments when doubt, mistrust, or fear resurface. You may feel triggered by familiar patterns or interactions. These remnants are part of the human process of healing. They serve as reminders not of weakness, but of survival. They are echoes of experience, guiding you to recognize danger, honor boundaries, and continue cultivating resilience. Over time, with conscious reflection and care, these scars own part of your narrative, a testament to endurance and the capacity for growth. Through all of this, the most profound realization emerges. Change is inevitable, but it can be transformative rather than destructive. You are never the same after loving a narcissist, but this is not purely a negative outcome. You are more perceptive, more resilient, more attuned to your own needs and limits. You have a deeper understanding of human behavior and a more profound capacity for empathy and emotional intelligence. You have learned lessons that cannot be taught in books or classrooms, lessons forged in the crucible of lived experience. The final stage of this transformation is acceptance. You come to recognize that your past experience, however painful, has shaped the person you have become. You honor the growth it prompted, the strength it revealed, and the wisdom it instilled. You do not need to condone the pain you endured or forget the suffering, but you can integrate it into your life story in a way that empowers rather than diminishes you. You can carry the lessons forward, using them to guide choices, relationships, and your ongoing journey of self-discovery. And in that acceptance, there is freedom. Freedom from self-blame, from doubt, from fear of repeating past patterns. Freedom to engage in relationships consciously, with clarity and discernment. Freedom to trust your instincts, honor your boundaries, and embrace love that is healthy, reciprocal, and life-affirming. The experience has changed you forever. Yes, but it has also prepared you to live more fully, to love more wisely, and to navigate the world with courage and authenticity. Ultimately, the truth becomes clear. You are not defined by what you endured, but by how you responded, reflected, and grew. You are forever changed, but this change carries gifts of insight, resilience, emotional intelligence, and self-worth. The heart that loved a narcissist is not broken beyond repair. It is awakened, refined, and ready to engage in connection that is real, grounded, and sustaining. You are never the same, but in that transformation lies your liberation. You are not diminished. You are empowered, aware, and unshakably alive.